So I wanted to mention about Los Angeles and some of the apartment units that are in Los Angeles, because the whole issue with Section 8 and some of the other issues that are really hot button topics, and topics that kind of get people fueled over some of the tragedies that could possibly happen. And for one, is slumlords. We have plenty of them in LA. A lot of people who own property, but they don't want to keep the property maintenance up, and they have a lot of rental units, and they are not really up to code. The maintenance is not good. They don't want to fix things. They take long times to fix things, and they're negligent about doing repairs. And then when they do have repairs done, they hire people that aren't really licensed, contracted individuals. They're not professionals. They're people who are like maybe somebody they picked up off the street, and they're cheap labor. And that's sort of that slumlord's way of getting out of having to pay professionals to do a good job, and to do a really good job where they don't have to come back and fix the same thing over and over again. And a lot of times in Los Angeles, you'll have slumlords, and some of the slumlords will rent to people who are a poor, low income, on the Section 8 program, subsidy programs, and they turn everything around. Some of them will turn things around on you and try to blame you for repairs that need to be done. It could be normal wear and tear on an apartment that you've lived in for a number of years, and a lot of times they don't want to admit that, okay, this is wear and tear. They try to turn it around because they're hoping that they can get some money or extra money out of you when it comes time for you moving out. And then they don't want you to call housing authorities, or fair housing. If there's any discrepancies, they threaten you. There's some that will threaten you, slumlords in other words, that'll threaten you. And they'll threaten you with things like, oh, well, when it comes time to go up on the rent, I know who I'm going to go up on the rent. Or they'll put tenants against other tenants. I know of some landlords that do that. They have different groups of people that live in their apartment units, and if you're from different cultures, they figure, oh, well, those tenants probably don't like each other because they're from different backgrounds, so I'll put them against one another. I'll say one thing to one tenant and then say something else to another tenant, so that other tenant will think that other tenant doesn't like them. And so they put tenants against one another, and it really is the owner that is doing it, the bad job. And so you will get like landlords that are slumlords in Los Angeles. They don't want to fix anything. The maintenance is poor. Tenants do have rights, but a lot of times you'll find some landlords too here in Los Angeles will discriminate. And they do have like certain meetings that they hold with tenants who are on programs to give them the full spectrum of what their rights are as a renter. But a lot of times, if you're in one of these units with a landlord who is not very reasonable or rational, like to use threats against you, a lot of times they'll pretend as though they don't even hear or care for the rights of the tenants, and then they'll use things against you like, oh, I know who I'm going to go up on the rent, or they'll put other tenants against one another. And sometimes things like that happen, or they take forever to come fix something, and things that they find a priority to fix are things that they feel that is personally going to come out of their pocket, like the water. They want to know how many people are living in units, because the more people are going to use water in the units, and then that means that's more water bill that they're going to have to pay. So a lot of times they'll ask one tenant about somebody else in the building, and then they'll turn it around and then they'll tell that tenant, oh, that tenant told me you had 50 people living there. And so a lot of times these landlords are slumlords, but also they do things to try to, degrade or make tenants miserable where they live. So there are places that they have like tenant rights where they have it posted online, and there is laws, and there are tenant rights, and the housing authorities will often have meetings. They'll hold meetings and inform the tenants of what types of rights they have when they're on these programs. And specifically too, we've had more recently with the people who are on Section 8, where some landlords won't rent to people when they find out they're on those programs. But I'm hearing now that they can be sued, and I'm also hearing that there are tenant rights and that you can't discriminate. That's another form of discrimination. So if you want to know your rights, you might want to look online for Housing Authority of LA or the City of LA to learn more about your rights as a tenant in Los Angeles. Thanks. Bye.